Hello and welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us as we continue our chronological read through of the Bible. We're going to return to the narrative of King David's reign, and we're going to do that with the account of a time when King David gave in to the temptation from Satan to take a census of the fighting men in Israel. Now, the problem is not so much the census per se. After all, God Himself had commanded uh, that census be taken at certain points in time in the past. But the issue is the shifting of the focus for protection and strength from God to, well, Israel herself. In other words, the number of men that we have that we can use in this way. So God had not commanded that had not commanded this census be taken, and it would actually even appear that He had warned King David against it through the advice of the commander of his troops of all people, Joab. But King David insisted. So over a period of about 9 months, the fighting men were counted. When the counting was done, God caused David to realize his guilt, and He gave him a choice of three punishments: either 3 years of famine, 3 months of devastation at the hands of their enemies, or 3 days of pestilence at the hand of God. Well, interestingly enough, King David chose 3 days of pestilence at the hand of God, counting on God's great mercy to limit the devastation that it would bring. He didn't want to turn himself over to other people or something like that. He wanted to turn himself over to God. What profound faith King David exhibits as he counts on God's mercy, even in a time of self inflicted punishment. Well, a time of punishment for something that he had inflicted on himself. And David's hope and choice, well, they are rewarded as God stays His hand just as the devastation reaches the outskirts of Jerusalem. There was indeed devastation during this period, but God stayed His hand as the devastation came to Jerusalem. God stays the hand of the angel as it's over the threshing floor of Onan, and He commands David to raise an altar there and to offer a sacrifice. So David purchases the site from Onan at full price, even though actually Onan wanted to give it to King David. But King David told Onan that he would not offer something that had cost him nothing. So King David paid the full price for the threshing floor. The offering was accepted by God. Well, actually, the threshing floor and the area around it. The offering was accepted by God, and the pestilence was ended. Actually, this particular site then would be the site where the temple would be built by Solomon, just outside of the current Jerusalem. Thus, even though King David is not allowed by God to build the temple, King David acquires and sets aside vast amounts of material for the temple, as well as he acquires the site where the temple is to be built. And then he counseled his son Solomon that Solomon, was to build in peace what David was not allowed to build. We also read Psalm 30 today. Now, Psalm 30 was written by David. It's a psalm of thanksgiving. David intended it to be to be read at the dedication of the temple, something that he was not going to get to see. Remember the events surrounding the unauthorized census that King David took and God's punishment for it that we just read about? Well, notice in this psalm the acknowledgement of God's deliverance when David would call for help. Notice the acknowledgement of God's steadfast love, something theologians call God's proper work, and the brevity of His anger, something theologians call His alien work. David gave credit to God for the steadfast faith that David, has enjoyed, and he reminds God of his desire to continue to praise Him in what I presume is a prayer that God would extend his life. Well, may God be with you and bless you as you continue your readings. I look forward to gathering with you again the next time, actually tomorrow.